This is really one of the, I think, most illuminating and truly inspiring panels of the night, because so much of what our organization is about is how do you have your baby? It's everything that goes into all the pre-planning, and sometimes you kind of forget it isn't just about getting to having that baby. It's about being a parent, and it's about dealing with your children growing up and challenging you and surprising you and loving you in so many different ways. So we're really, really honored to have some amazing people on the panel. This is Tomer Pool-Dayan. Tomer, he's going to tell you a little bit about himself in a second, but Tomer has two dads, and he lives in Riverdale, New York. And this is Maddie Knopf, and Maddie lives in Long Island, New York, with her two dads. And Clem Pine, who lives in Oregon with his mom, who is Michelle, who's on our board, who is a surrogate mother. So we actually have the perspective of a family member of a surrogate for you to hear and learn from. So I'm going to ask each of you if you would just introduce yourself, tell us how old you are, tell us a little bit about your family. Tomer?
Hello, my name is Tomer. I'm 17 years old. I'm currently a high school senior. I live in Riverdale, New York. I have two fathers, Ron over there and Greg, who left a few hours ago. I also have a twin sister, Eleanor, who's sitting over there. She usually does these panels, but I'm giving it a shot this time. Yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Maddie?
I'm Maddie Knopf. I'm from Roslyn, New York, in Long Island. I live with my dad, and my other dad lives in the city. And, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a freshman in high school.
I'm Clem, and I live in Klamath Falls, Oregon, with my mom, my dad, and my two younger sisters. And my mom's a surrogate for two families.
How old are you, Clem?
I'm 11.
11. So cool. So I think the first question, and by the way, if anybody wants to ask questions throughout, please I want to make this a conversation, just raise your hand and I'll bring you a mic. But do wait until I bring you a microphone, because we're taping the session and we want to make sure we get all of the audio for it. So the first question that I want to ask, and I think that this applies to everybody. But Clem, I want to start with you, because this is an interesting perspective that we don't usually get. When your mom did her first surrogacy journey, did she tell you about what was going on? How old were you at the time? How did she explain what was happening to you? And then did that change for her second surrogacy journey? What was the way that she explained it to you and to the rest of your family?
I was 7 at the time, and I don't really think my mom explained it to me. I just kind of remember meeting two people and just kind of catching on to the idea that my mom was giving these two men, she was giving them two babies for them to have, and that's all I really remember.
Do you remember how you felt about it? What was kind of going on in your head at that time?
I just really remember kind of feeling weird about it at first, and then being okay with the subject later.
That's very cool. So Maddie, do you remember when your dad's told you about sort of your origin story, about the way that everything happened? How did they do it, and what was that story like for you?
I don't think it was really like one designated point, but it was through like years. But I remember sometimes my dad like drew pictures explaining it. I'm not really sure how it worked, but but yeah, there was no really designated time.
There was no like sit down conversation, and this is.
Well, there were, but like they weren't like really serious. Like it was different times, like to explain different things.
Tomer?
Yeah, I think it was pretty similar for my family. I think at each stage in our lives, our parents would explain it to us in an age-appropriate manner. So whenever we would ask questions about like, whose belly did I come out of, when my sister asked that once, they've always explained it to us in an appropriate way. They've never said, oh, you're too young, oh, this is a complicated thing. They've always explained it to us. They've always answered our questions. And so I think because of that, I've just kind of grown up knowing how I've been born the entire time. I can't remember a specific time this kind of was revealed to me or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if they spoke about this in the previous panel, but there's been a lot of research being done now about the children of parents through surrogacy, and also particularly gay dads through surrogacy, and they've also extended, I believe, to IVF children. And the predominant finding has been the earlier and the more comfortably you share your origin story with your child, the better they cope with it, the less problems they have with it, and the more adapted they are to it. So that doesn't surprise me that you had ongoing conversations about it. We talked about conversations with your parents. But what was it like with your friends? And I know this probably also changed over time, but did you ever have any experiences with your friends where they didn't accept it, or did you ever have any awkward conversations? And if you did, how did you negotiate it? And also, how did you share it with your parents, and how did they help you with that? Maddie?
I don't think it was like a problem when I was explaining it to my friends, because I learned at a pretty young age, and so when I was telling friends, it was just kind of like a lot of people asked, and so it was just like an ongoing explanation. So I don't think anyone had a problem with it or anything. It was just like, oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. You live in Long Island, so you probably have some other friends who are in non-traditional families, single parents, maybe two moms, two dads, things like that. Tomer?
Yeah, it's pretty similar for me. I can't really remember any really bad interactions I've had with friends when I tell them I have two dads. I think that's largely in part due to the fact that we live in New York City. I've had some very accepting friends. I think it has changed a lot. As a younger kid, I would tell them I have two dads, and they would be like, what? That's impossible. There's no way. You have to have a mom. And, I would explain it to them in the only way I knew how at the time. But as it went on, I think my friends became, it was more like disbelief and became more interest or curiosity. And I think even now when I tell my friends I have two dads, they're like, wow, that's so cool. Like, how is that possible? And I explain to them the whole process of surrogacy, and they think it's like the coolest thing ever. And so I don't think I really had any terrible interactions. I've had some friends who think it's weird, or I wouldn't call them friends, but I've had some people who think it's a little weird. But I think mostly it's been a positive experience.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, because one of the things that happens when you go through this journey as a parent is you kind of become a walking advertisement for surrogacy. Everyone starts asking you questions, and you find yourself explaining the process over and over again, and to hear that you had to do that with your friends as well is pretty interesting. Clem, when your mom was pregnant with her surrogacy pregnancies, did your friends have any reaction to it? Did you share that this was what was going on with your mom?
I only really told my close friends. I only really kind of understood what was happening around 5th grade, and I only told my close friends because I only really felt comfortable letting them know, because I thought that other people might find it weird, or that people might start judging, not just me, but like the whole surrogacy idea. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember having any awkward conversations with my friends. I just kind of remember telling them once that that my mom was a surrogate, and they found it cool. They were interested, and wanted to know more about it. Mm-hmm. Did you share with them that she was caring for a gay couple? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. I remember when my surrogate was from the South, from Southern Virginia, and she only shared with her very close friends and family that she was caring for a gay couple, but what she said to everybody else was that she was helping a couple who couldn't have a family on their own. So move, and by the way, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Moving into a little bit to, I'm interested in knowing what your relationship, after everything was explained, about your family, about your family, what was your relationship, or is your relationship with your surrogate and or egg donor? Is it ongoing? Is it continuing? And I'll share that with you also with the intended parents. Tomer?
Yeah, so my egg donor is actually my aunt, so I obviously have a pretty close relationship with her. That being said, I don't think it's closer than towards my other aunts. And like her kids, who are, I guess, technically my half-siblings, I wouldn't say that has significantly impacted my relationship with them. But I appreciate how she's helped my family, but I don't think that I treat her any differently than I would my other family members. And my surrogate, I am not really in contact with. I know who she is. I'm Facebook friends with her, but I'm not really that in that close contact with her. But I don't really feel like that's something I'm lacking. And I know that if I ever did want to reach out to her, she's there, and I would be able to access that if I needed to.
Maddie?
I personally don't have a relationship with my egg donor or my surrogate. I don't really think that's made an impact on my life. I mean, I don't really think that it's like extremely necessary. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to meeting either of them. Like, I don't know. It's not been like that significant in my life.
Excellent. Clem, do you have, I think I overheard your mom talking about you going on vacation recently, and you were with some of the parents that she helped to have a family. Did you want to tell us about that?
So for summer vacation, we went to see my mom's second pair of surrogates, and I think we go and talk to them. We went and talked to them over the summer, and we stayed with them, and we have a closer relationship with our second pair than we do our first, and we talk to our second pair a lot more.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to an interesting question that I think is really influential for everyone here. From someone who's a member of a family, of a surrogate mom, what do you remember the relationship being like when she was pregnant, not just with your mom, but with you and your family? And if you could give anyone any advice in the audience about how you could better support or be there for a surrogate and her family, what would that advice be?
My only advice for future surrogates would be if your kid has any questions about it, to answer them in the most real and possible way you can, and to try to explain it to them the best way you can, because you don't, and to try to keep in contact with your surrogates that you're giving babies, because it's a very strange but close relationship you have with them, because they're just two strangers that were picked, and you kind of have to correspond and meet with them and talk with them throughout the time, and to try to keep in contact with them as most as possible.
Words of wisdom. Do we have any questions? Anybody? Yes. Hold on one second. Let me come to you with the mic, please.
Hi guys, thanks for sharing your stories with us. I have a few questions actually. So my first question for Maddie and Tomer, who are your female role models in your life? And do you feel like you are different or missed out in some way? That type of role model maybe that you don't have compared to maybe what your friends have?
Okay.
I'll answer this first because I think it's maybe a little bit less important for me, but I definitely don't think I was lacking in female role models in my life. I've had very supportive neighbors and both of my aunts and my grandmas. I definitely don't think it was lacking. Yeah, I've definitely had someone to talk to if I ever needed that in my life.
So I have my aunt, either my aunts or my grandma, and a lot of my dad's friends who I'm also close with. I can always contact them if I need anything, but I haven't personally had a problem with anything that's happened. And then the second question, I don't know. With my friends with their moms, I guess they do have a relationship, but I don't think it hasn't really made me feel left out or anything, or feel upset because I don't have that, because I have other people in my life that I could turn to if I need anything.
Thanks. I have one last question. So for Clem, do you feel any kind of relationship or bond with the children that your mom gave to either of the couples?
I do, because I kind of feel like maybe a cousin or a faraway cousin, because I guess because I've wanted.
It's okay. Take your time. It's all right. It's okay. And if it's too much, you don't even have to answer. It's okay.
No, it's okay. I do like to keep in contact, or would like to keep in contact with them when they get older, because I just think it's really cool that, again, that they're kind of like a cousin to me, and I feel close to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. My surrogate was from the South, and her children referred to my son, and I can do this because I'm from the South, as their sort of brother, because that's the relationship. I mean, we keep in touch with them also. So sorry for the bad Southern accent. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
Did you guys have any friends growing up who were also surrogate children? And if you did, do you think that would have changed anything?
So throughout my life, I've definitely had sort of a community of other children of LGBT parents. I guess in the two main places that's been true is through my synagogue, which is CBST, which is for gay and lesbians, or I guess all the LGBT community. Most of the kids there aren't my age. Most of them are younger, but I still feel like that's a pretty good community where I can talk to kids who have similar circumstances as I do. And I think a little more recently, I went to a summer camp called Camp Highlight, and it's for children of LGBT parents, and it's a week-long summer camp in Pennsylvania. And I think that was an amazing experience. I was able to talk to a lot more kids my age from around the East Coast who have similar experiences as I do. And I think that was pretty interesting because I don't really have that at my school as much. But I definitely wouldn't say that during the school year it felt lacking that I didn't know anyone with my circumstances. And that's probably because I don't really feel like a much different kid because I have two dads. I don't feel like that makes me a lot different than other children. But I think definitely having that community is definitely something nice to have, and it's definitely beneficial if it's possible.
Growing up, well, I'm still growing up, but but I don't have any friends that were born through surrogacy. I've met people along the way, but no, I haven't had any. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh my gosh. I'll meet you halfway. Okay, hold on one second. Oh, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I just wondered if you guys had any conflict from maybe other family members who didn't agree with the decision that your parents had made. And if so, how did you handle that?
I haven't had any problems with other family members. Yeah.
Yeah, the same for me. My family's been very accepting of my situation, and yeah, I've definitely never had any problems with that.
I wasn't really part of the conversation, but I just remember overhearing my mom, I think, talking to my grandma about my grandma didn't really agree that my mom was caring for surrogate, well, that she was a surrogate, and that's the only conflict I remember.
Oh. Any other questions? Yes.
So this is mostly for the two children born through surrogacy, but I know in the course of your lives, LGBT rights at large have changed a lot between marriage equality and more recognition of transgender experience and many other things. And at the same time, in the new administration, a lot of that's under attack. So I'm wondering how your parents, in light of your family circumstances, sort of talk about these issues with you and explain them to you as they happen, and if you feel like that's a different conversation because of the nature of your families.
So yeah, I mean, I've definitely been very aware of current events regarding gay marriage and surrogacy, I guess, as well. I can remember where I was when marriage equality was passed, and that was definitely a great moment for our family. I was very happy. And I can also remember where I was when our current president was elected, and we had a discussion about the implications of that. That being said, I think living in New York is kind of a different experience than maybe living somewhere else in the country. And I don't think I've really been exposed to many of the things that people living other places might be exposed to in terms of kind of the opponents of surrogacy or gay marriage. But I think it's definitely important to be aware of what's happening. But I wouldn't say I'm as strongly personally affected by it as others might be.
I don't know how to answer this question. Like, I really don't know. I haven't really had any conversations about any, like, I don't know. But then I remember when Trump when he won, like, my parents weren't like thrilled. But yeah, I don't really know how else to answer the question.
We have that discussion in our house all the time. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to come back to you for more in a moment. One of the things that we, as intended parents, one of the discussions we have and one of the journeys that we go through is trying to understand and making the decision about who is going to be a biological father. If you're in a couple, who will be the biological father? And I was wondering if you, Maddie and Tomer, could share your story, if you're comfortable, about if there is a difference for you, if you have feel like you have a different relationship with either parent, and if biology reflects on that or informs that relationship at all. Maddie, you want to go first?
So I don't think there's a difference, like, between how I feel. Like, I know which one is related to me biologically, but in my case, I seem to have more conflict with my biological father. But I I know how that is with other people.
Tomer?
I think for me it's a little different because I'm biologically related to both of my parents. The sperm donor was one of my father's, and the egg donor was my other father's sister. So I don't really have any kind of, I've never felt different from one side of the family towards the other. If that weren't the case, I'm on it. Honestly, I don't really know how I would feel, but I think it's definitely nice that I'm biologically related to both sides. But I definitely wouldn't say that it would completely change my outlook on my parents if I knew I was biologically related to one and not the other.
Yeah. I think some of the questions that I'm asking, and I'll be honest, and I'm prefacing the next question also, are coming from some of the places that are concerning and sometimes fearful for intended parents. We want to protect our children so much, but there's some things that you just can't protect your children from. I don't know whether any of you have experienced any kind of discrimination because of your family structure, or you've been in a situation with friends in a quote-unquote traditional family, and you've felt something different in that situation. But I was wondering if you could share if that's been an issue for either of you. Tomer?
I think overall I've not experienced a lot of negativity towards my family. That being said, I think there were times when the response I received was not ideal. I think one example of that was in a summer camp I went to, not the one with kids of LGBT parents. I heard a lot of around 5th grade, I heard a lot of my bunkmates using the word gay to mean stupid or dumb, which I know a lot of preteen boys tend to do. And it was pretty disconcerting to me. I didn't really know what to do because I'd never really experienced that. But then, I told our camp director what was happening, and we held a discussion as a cabin about what it meant to be gay, what the word gay meant, and how I had 2 fathers and what that meant to me. And it was pretty remarkable how quickly they changed. And they didn't completely stop using the word gay, I guess. They were still teenage boys, but they definitely didn't use it in a derogatory way, the way they'd been using it before. And I think that really just goes to show how you might, as a kid, you might experience a negativity towards it, but I think a good conversation is something that can really go a long way. So as long as you're communicating with your friends or family members about the process and what it really means, I think you can have really positive results.
Excellent. Maddie?
I haven't really had any negativity towards me, but I mean, some people could be kind of confused by the subject. And yeah, people definitely use the term gay a lot in their I think it's just part of their vocabulary because people use it a lot to mean dumb or stupid. But I don't think people know that I have 2 dads. I just don't think it comes to them. I just don't think they pay attention. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've heard it for a while. I don't really pay attention to it. It doesn't really make a big deal. It's not really a big deal to me because I know they're not trying to be offensive or anything. But yeah, I haven't really faced any negativity.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to hear, Tomer, your story about when it happened earlier on, and I've known Tomer for a very long time and seen him kind of grow up since probably he was about 4 years old. So to see your evolution in responding to questions like that, and I know they're all age specific, and I know when you're 9 years old and you're in 6th grade, you're probably hearing a lot of different things, and people throw the word gay around. But do you, Clem, do you have a different kind of thought of what that's like now because of the relationship that you and your family have had with gay couples that your moms had to help to have their families? Do you hear that word differently? Or do you hear it at all? Maybe you don't even hear it at all, which would be lovely, a world to aspire to.
I don't think I hear it as much as people say it, but people would only, started saying it around 5th grade, and that's when I started understanding. So I've always had the same perspective for the term gay. And when I hear people use it, I think I might be a little more offended than another student walking down the hall might be.
Yeah. Speaking of school and your school situation, my son's in 5th grade. He goes to a school in the West Village, and there are 2 other children with 2 dads in his class. So I know I live kind of in an island of openness, and there's great LGBT groups and everything. But in Roslyn and in Riverdale, did your parents ever have to go in and, have a discussion with the school administration or with a teacher just to tell them about sensitivity issues, or did anything ever come up in school for you, Maddie?
In elementary school, I don't really remember if that ever happened, but maybe starting from middle school, it hasn't really been a sensitive subject, and if there was a problem, I wouldn't have a problem telling the teacher myself, because I don't think it's that big of a deal.
So Tamir, being a little bit older, do you remember any experiences where some education had to happen?
I think it was, the first school I went to from nursery school until 8th grade was a small private school with around 20 kids per grade. And the school I go to now is a high school with 750 kids per grade. So I think I had 2 very different experiences. For the smaller school, I know that my parents, before each grade, they would go up to my teachers and kind of tell them what our family situation was. And it was never a problem in the slightest. I also can remember our school forms would say father and mother. So they went to the school office and they told them about that, and it was eventually changed to parent 1 and parent 2. So it's never really been a long-term problem, but any of the small problems along the way were pretty easily solved. And then for the larger school I go to now, it's definitely been very different. I don't think my parents don't go to my teachers in advance and tell them that I have 2 fathers. But I also think it's never been a problem, and I don't think in almost any New York school it would be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different here. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, please feel free.
This is for Maddie and for Tomer. So you're probably doing sleepovers, or your friend's sleeping over, or you're going to your friend's house. This, I think, is more for the perception of the parents of your friends. Was there ever any awkwardness there, or any conversations you had to have, or your friend saying, no, my parents said I can't sleep over, or anything like that?
My friend's parents don't have any problems with it. I mean, one girl that I just became friends with, her mom asked me what happened, and I explained it to her, and it was just oh, that's really cool. But no, there was no problem. I went and slept over at her house that night. Yeah, so no, none of my friends' parents have a problem with it, and my parents are friends with some of my friends' parents, and it's never been a problem for me.
Yeah, the same for me. It's never really been a problem. I think also, that being said, I've never had a sleepover with a friend who didn't know I had 2 dads. And I don't think I would invite someone who wouldn't be okay with me having 2 dads to a sleepover. So I don't really think that's going to be a problem for any kid.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Keep them coming.
How do you identify your parents in terms of name, like daddy, papa, or daddy and an initial, or how do you distinguish?
Maddie?
I do dad and papa.
Yeah, I do daddy and Abba because he's Israeli, so it's the Hebrew word for dad.
Clem, do you have any embarrassing nicknames for your parents?
It's always been mom and dad.
There you go. Oh, that's great. Any other questions? Do we have another one? Yes, thank you. I feel like Phil Donahue.
I actually have a question for Clem, just because I think you said you were about 7 when your mom went through the first process. And so actually my sister has volunteered to be our surrogate, and my nephew is 7, my other nephew is 6. And I'm wondering, from your experience, at about that age, is there anything that you wished that people had communicated differently or involved you differently with 2 nephews about the same age as that?
No, I never really expected special treatment. I always expected that I was going to be treated like any normal kid, and that this wouldn't bring me any special power or anything.
You're a good person, Clem. You're just a good person. Is there, well, I mean, I'll just do a quick follow-up. Is there anything, and we talked a little bit about it before, any advice you would give them to help in the relationship, suggestions for the mom who has the 2 children who are your age about how to handle it, sort of some of the things maybe your mom did with you?
Again, the only advice I would give is to, again, try to explain it in a matter that they can understand and that they're comfortable with.
That's good advice.
Clem, that's another question for you. During the pregnancy of your mom with the surrogate, with the intended parents, how did you feel during the pregnancy, especially towards the end when she's about to have the baby? Were you excited? And how did you feel after she gave the baby and the baby that was with you in her belly for so long was no longer there? Were you disappointed?
That's a future teen panel member over there.
I just always remember feeling kind of excited and nervous near the end of the pregnancy, because I know that, again, they kind of feel like a cousin to me because it's my mom, it's also her mom, and I just remember feeling excited and kind of nervous because this is kind of like another member of the family.
One thing that question actually brought up for me, a memory for me, was I think it was harder, and Michelle, I don't know, maybe I'll hand the mic to you and ask you. Our surrogate Shannon's husband, Joe, he didn't want to come to the hospital because he said just that. He said, this baby's been growing in my wife's belly for 9 months, and I've been sleeping, next to that baby. And I think he had a little bit harder time dealing with it than that sounds like Clem had. So Michelle, if I can ask you a question, is there any advice that you would give us to help bring in surrogates' husbands into the journey and help them to kind of make the process smoother?
Yeah, I think that relationship is really important with the spouse as well, like I mentioned on one of the other panels, I think. We didn't experience that. My husband came with me to the hospital and was happy for me to not be pregnant anymore. And I think he didn't say that, but I think that Clem was happy for me to not be pregnant anymore and tired and grouchy, you see. Whereas his sisters were kind of sad that the baby then wasn't there anymore. But just finding a connection with that spouse some way that you can, it's something that anything that you can find that you have in common with them that you can build a connection with so that they feel like they're part of that as well, and that there's some buy-in to giving this baby back to you, and that they really want to. Again, my husband had a better time the second journey because he really had that strong connection and really cares about Jamie and Marco so much that it made it easier for that second time around.
What was the connection?
What was their connection?
Well, part of it was geographical, right?
Part of it is that they're in San Francisco and not Israel. What did they, I was telling them this earlier. We live in Southern Oregon, and so when they came and visited us for the ultrasound, we took them mushroom hunting. And, they're in San Francisco, and they thought this was the weirdest thing they'd ever done, is go out in the woods and walk around and pick mushrooms. And they're like already planning in, like, okay, when's mushroom season? Like, when can we come up? So that's their connection, is like getting out in the outdoors.
Oh my God. I went to college in Tallahassee, and mushroom picking has a totally different meaning.
If I may ask, are you a traditional surrogate or a gestational? Gestational, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I want to ask one last question of everyone, but particularly of Tomer and Maddie. If you had any advice that you could give to this room of parents who are at the very beginning of the journey, and have a million questions themselves, what would you say to them to help them through the process? Tomer?
I think in the end of the day, whatever combination of dads and moms that your child has, what it's going to come down to is the love and support you give them when you have that child. And I think if that's there, then it'll all work out in the end.
Maddie?
I think that when you have a child, you should just also, like what he said, treat them with love and don't treat them like they're any different from anyone else, because just because they're part of a different kind of family doesn't mean like they're any less than anybody else, any of their friends. And I just think just go into it with a positive attitude, and it'll be a journey.
That's right. Let go of the control. I want to say to you, Clem, you're one of the youngest members we've ever had on our panel, and I really thank you for being here. And Maddie and Tomer, I think your insights have been priceless for us, and we really appreciate all three of you sharing this with us. Before we go and you give them the final resounding applause, I just want to thank you all for making it through the whole evening with us, but also to let you know that if you're interested in becoming a part of our organization, I think you can see the love and the commitment we have to it, that you contact us, go online, get on our mailing list, join our Facebook group, volunteer at our conferences if you can. Feel free to donate, please, to our GPAP program to help other people have families. We look forward to your experience as a parent, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And we can have one last, please, round of applause for our panelists.